Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Places Please. My name is Richard. Thank you so much for picking this podcast to listen to. This is a podcast all about theatre and theatre makers and creators and their process. And I am very excited to introduce my next guest, which is Eoin Corcoran, who is a very good friend of mine. And we met in college, and he started off in a completely different career path and went in towards musical direction, which is something I haven't covered on the podcast yet. And I'm just so intrigued with all the inner workings of that I think we had a lovely conversation. He's currently a piano player and conducting some performances of the UK tour of Mamma Mia. And he talks a little bit about that and also the cult classic that he worked on called Rebecca. Now, I do have some unfortunate news that this will be an audio-only podcast. This is the only one. I recorded this a while ago. I had some issues with my camera. Eoin was so gracious to be one of my first guests, and I could not get the camera to work. I'm pretty awful with technology. So, this is an audio only, which is disappointing, but I'm sure that you're still going to enjoy it. The other announcement that I have is that I'm going to be releasing some bite-sized podcast episodes with some of the creators and theatre makers involved in Galway Theatre Festival. They'll be released over the next coming weeks, as their kind of festival starts off very soon. So if you have any interest in going to see anything in the Galway Theatre Festival, keep your eyes on my social media. That is Richard's Theatre Reviews. And you're going to see some amazing episodes. They're really small, so you could just take them and enjoy them pretty easily rather than it being like a long episode. So make sure you look out for those. And again, if you have any interest in getting involved in the podcast, please do contact me. You can do so by reaching out to me on placespleasepod@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's talk to Eoin Corcoran. Okay, so Eoin, can you tell me a little bit about your experience in theatre and how that started?
Yeah. I mean, it's not today or yesterday that it started. I actually, I was lucky growing up. My parents were both very involved in amateur dramatics, both musicals and straight theatre. And I mean, I still remember as a kid, I was brought along to rehearsals. My mum was a teacher in Strokestown, and for their annual musical, we would always be brought in from when we were toddlers. We would be handed to whoever wasn't on stage at the time, told to be quiet, sit down and shut up. And that was basically how I first got like experience in theatre and all things dramatical. And from there, it was like working with my local Amdram Society, the Malthouse Clares in Mount Bellew. And yeah, I always thought like theatre was going to be one of these things that I did on the side. I studied engineering, funnily enough, in Galway, which is how we met actually. And from there, I suppose the two of us, we both did shows with musical societies and in the university with the musical societies and Dramstock there as well. So that's how I kind of carried that childhood experience into adulthood. But after that, it was a case of, like I said, I always thought it was something I would do on the side. And I suppose I'd never really seen anyone or knew anyone who did it professionally from where I grew up in Mount Bellew in Galway. So it was just a case of, I discovered a friend of mine who had studied, straight directing in London at the time and then gone on to work in London. And after a conversation with him, I realised that the same option is available for musical direction. So that's how I got into it. I studied in Glasgow. It was a 1-year master's, had a great time there, made the move to London, and luckily, and touch wood, it's all been going well since.
Yeah, I think your trajectory has been so incredible to watch from like when we first met in college and now seeing you going on to this amazing, like full on West End UK tour productions.
I would describe myself as, one thing that always comes to the fore is just, I like to find the joy in life. So regardless of how I appear physically, how I dress or whatever, rarely am I seen without a smile on my face, just showing like joy in whatever I'm doing or finding it. So I always like to lead with a smile on my face. There it
You
is.
didn't mention your fashion sense, which is disappointing.
I'll let you describe that one.
Do you want to maybe explain your role for people who are listening in? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am first and foremost a musical director, and that can be quite a broad term to use for what I do. Oftentimes it will involve obviously like playing piano accompaniment in the running of the show. It involves conducting, it involves rehearsals, but occasionally as well I will throw my hand at arranging and orchestration. Like I've worked on some new musicals that are up and coming. And in that case, I arrange them for, let's say, you'd go from a blank slate where you have a bones of a song or a structure, and then making that into a fully realized performance with maybe obviously singers, maybe some ensemble singers, instruments, anything from a couple of instruments up to a full orchestra. So in a nutshell, that's a musical director. At the minute, I'm working as an assistant musical director on Mamma Mia, and it's essentially the similar jobs. However, the ball doesn't stop with me. I'm assisting my boss, my musical director, who's also the musical supervisor for Mamma Mia, Carlton Edwards. Fantastic man. He's actually been on he's been on this tour for 22 years, and actually did a few years in London with the show before that. So he's been part of the Mamma Mia gang. He's been on the island for the best part of about 25, 26 years, almost since the show's inception.
25 years is a really long time. How does that not get boring for a musical director?
It's a really interesting one. And I have had these conversations with him about it. I think where he finds the joy in the piece, first and foremost, he's a massive ABBA fan, as am I. I find the music it's so universal. And everybody knows all the songs, wherever you know them from. You might know them from your childhood. You might know them from the first time you saw the Mamma Mia movie or indeed the musical. But on the surface, they seem really simple and they're very accessible. But as soon as you kind of dive in a little bit deeper, they're a lot more complex. And while they're accessible, they don't always do the simple and basic thing. And I think what Carlton really loves is, like, regardless of how you are playing the same music every night for, let's say, the last 25 years, as I was saying, but within that you get different, like no two shows ever feel the same. You get different audiences. And in fact, I feel like because this is the touring production of the show, it's a replica production of the West End production, which is there the whole time in the West End, in the Novello at the minute. But because you're touring, you're in different venues every 2 or 3 weeks. And sometimes those venues are international. Like last year we did a lot of like Western Europe. We did Abu Dhabi, we did China. And in fact, I know he has been all over the world with this, and it really is like going on a holiday with your job. And we're really lucky to be doing something that we love doing, and obviously getting paid to do it at the same time.
Yeah. And you get to see the whole world while
absolutely
spreading the joy of Mamma Mia.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting. Like, yes, you see the whole world in terms of like all its sights and its beauty, but you also get to because we spend maybe like 2 or 3 weeks in each city, you really get a chance to immerse yourself in that culture or in the people, and you really understand it. And especially, it's really interesting seeing the show performed. It's the same show. We always perform it in English. And if we're in another country that doesn't speak English as its first language, we will have subtitles so that the audience can understand. And it's really interesting seeing how the different audiences respond. And like this year, we're doing a lot of UK cities. And as a script that was developed initially in the UK and was written by UK writers, you can really see how it lands, and the nuance of the comedy and all the beats and all the structures and dynamics are really picked up on with the UK audience. Sometimes not as much internationally, but regardless of how much the audience pick up on during the show, those last 10 minutes where we have the finale, essentially mega mix of like Mamma Mia, Dancing Queen and Waterloo, people are always up on their feet, dancing along, singing along. And it just goes to show the universal appeal of ABBA. All ages love it. All cultures, countries, people love it.
And it's so popular. So it must be so nice to travel to show that, like, you know, you're going to get the same reaction each night as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting. I heard someone say before, like, that when audiences, for the most part, when audiences come to see the show, they come for the ABBA, but they go away with so much more. because you have that story in there, and I feel like the story is it is reasonably simple at its primitive level, but because of all the different characters and people you meet throughout it, everyone in the audience, no matter what your background is, you can relate to something or someone on that stage.
For sure. I do want to ask you about some productions you've been involved in. Is that okay?
Yeah, 100%.
Let's go back to Galway University Musical Society.
Of
Can you tell
course.
me about your time there?
Yeah, 100%. I had a really fantastic time with Galway University Musical Society, or GUMS as we all called it. Let's cut the word count down and use that from now on. Had a really fantastic time when I was there. In my first year, I was actually on stage in Urinetown. And then after that, I took over musical directing the shows. We did producers in our second year. We did Pippin in my third year, and did Kips, Half a Sixpence in final year. So 3 very, very different shows. But what was lovely about it, the putting on of the shows was great. And there's always a fantastic sense of achievement when you have a company full of people who aren't being paid to be there, who are doing it purely for the love and the social aspect. When you can put on shows that are incredibly well received, in a lot of cases award winning as well. When you can put that on and people appreciate it and enjoy it, there's a massive sense of achievement when you consider that the average age of people in the company was 20.
Yeah, and there was always the challenge as well of balancing your studies and the musical.
Yeah, maybe
How
you can't
did
see
you navigate that?
You can't see my face right now. There was a lot of cramming done in those study weeks. Yes, everyone always said that I got a degree in GUMS or DRAMSOC, and my second degree was in engineering. Certainly things fall by the wayside. However, yes, you're talking about studies and stuff like that right now, and the academics is the main reason why people intend to go to college. But I can guarantee you that myself and my friends in the drama societies learned a lot more in life from those experiences than we ever did in any lecture hall. So while the academic learning, when we were putting on shows and tiring ourselves out from darkness until darkness again, we learned a lot more during those hours than we ever did in any academic setting.
Did your engineering degree ever come into play as a musical director?
Absolutely, percent. The one thing that I always say to people about musical direction is the job is 10% music and 90% everything else. So we're talking like logistics. There's a lot of organizing, like you are liaising between people in different departments. Even just a rough example, when you're in rehearsals, you need to be able to communicate with all of the different departments, with the dance department, with the technical department, with wardrobe, wigs. You need to liaise that sort of logistical side. So having that logistical brain and that setup helps first and foremost. Communication is a massive part of it, because that's what our job is first and foremost. It's communicating music to actors, to dancers, to other production team members, so that you can all achieve the same goal at the end. It's almost like you're a translator for what's written on the page to the rehearsal room or the stage or whatever it is, because oftentimes you are working with people who mightn't be musically versed, who might not be able to read music, but they're fantastic dancers. So like that's the skill that they bring. So therefore we are communicating our skills to help them perform the show to the best of their ability.
And when does the musical director have to kind of work with those other departments?
A lot of time with the performance departments, especially. So let's say like the acting department and the dance department, you're working with them constantly. Whether it's you're working with the acting department when it comes to a solo singer who needs coaching musically and from an acting perspective. You're working with the dance department. The dance department needs something to dance to, hence enter the music department. But also you'll be working a lot of things out between. Oftentimes you might have a scene of dialogue that is underscored, and you're trying to work that out and make the whole musical landscape of the piece work to serve it best. Then you'll be liaising with stage management a lot, who will take their cues from your conducting. Same with lighting. With sound, there's a massive relationship between the music department and the sound department. And in the best instances, when you have a music department and a sound department who think as one and who work as one, that you're not fighting each other, that you're both finding solutions and compromises to deliver the best show. When you have that relationship, you do get something magical in return, because you are like, as a musician, you are at the mercy of the sound department. And if you have a sound department who maybe are overstretched or are not as capable or whatever, it does impact the music. And it's important that the actors hear what they need to hear sound wise. Important that the audience hear what they need to hear sound wise. So that's the beauty of like those relationships. Like, theatre is one of the most collaborative forms of work that you'll find anywhere in the world.
So don't piss off your sounders.
Don't piss off anyone. Don't piss off anyone. That's what I really try.
There you go. Okay, so we move on from university level, and then you went off and did your additional work. Can we talk about Rebecca?
We can, absolutely.
Hey,
Absolutely.
okay.
So, it was a really exciting project, Rebecca. It was in the Charing Cross Theatre in London. The show had existed for about 15 years previous, and regular productions happen in Germany and Austria of the show. It's based on the novel of the same name, Rebecca, by Daphne du Maurier. However, this was its first production in English. And one of the really exciting things about it was we had an 18-piece orchestra for it, which was just almost unheard of. And at the time in London, it was tied biggest band in London, along with Wicked, that also has an 18-piece. So that was an incredible experience, musically an incredible experience.
And they put you at the very back of the audience in a back room. I remember seeing that when I went to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone's ever been to the Charing Cross, it's not a big theatre by any matter or means. I think it has about 200 or 300 seats, and suddenly you're like, where on earth are we going to put this bloody 18-piece orchestra? And it just so happened that there was an old used, I think it was a storage room behind the sound desk, which they fully kitted out, soundproofed and everything. And yeah, we were all in there. The conductor was in there, and the conductor was then on screens for the cast to see via like a camera link. And yeah, we were all crammed in there, all 18 of us. So it was it was fun, and that ran for 12 weeks in London.
I think my understanding of Rebecca before I saw it was the controversial kind of production that never came about to be.
Of course.
And I think, so basically what was happening there was that there was investors that put money into seeing the show open, and then the investors fell through, and there's a whole kind of scandal around that as well. Fake investors. Now, this London production was separate from that, but was there that feeling of unsureness given?
Absolutely. Given the show's history, and there have been numerous attempts to make the English translation of it, to give it a premiere, whether it's that famous Broadway one or there are others that have happened down through the years, and it just never came to fruition. So then there is that sense on like, oh, is the show cursed? Is the ghost of Rebecca haunting us, you know? Never forget it. But yeah, there was that sense of anticipation, and like hilariously, you had the show has a lot of super fans around the world. So suddenly, when we were opening in London, people were flying over from because of all the controversy and drama around it, and we had people flying from America, from where the show originated in Austria, coming over to see it, just to see the opening night production and actually see it happen on a stage.
And it's so big in Germany.
Massive.
And like even the fire effects and the set.
Yeah. It would have been fantastic. It would have been fantastic to see the version of the show that we did was much more scaled down from that, purely because of the limits of the theatre we were in. Like, I know the version in Germany has, like, obviously, if you've seen the clips, it has the big massive staircase that goes on fire at the end. Sorry for any spoilers, but apparently there are 4 fire marshals on stage every night, just with extinguishers and all at the ready, just in case something should go wrong. And that's in the original Austrian and German production.
And would you like to see Rebecca come back in?
I would. I'd love to see it come back again. I would love to see it with the whole show is it's melodramatic. It's a classic novel set in this grand like estate, and it would be fantastic to see the show realized with that same level of opulence. It does need that big, because even the music, we had like a massive orchestra, and the music sounded grand. The performances were very melodramatic and very grand. and that needs to be reflected in visuals as well. Absolutely. And I would love to see it come back properly, maybe for a tour or possibly in a bigger venue, because it relies on that sense of spectacle.
Yeah, and even like a theatre space would just really help that, I think.
Absolutely. However, given that this was the first realization of the show in English, the show did need a minimalized approach to make sure that it works in English first, and to iron out the kinks. Because, look, being realistic about it, these productions cost money to put on. And oftentimes you don't want to spend all of this money on massive sets and costumes and visuals and all of that to figure out that something doesn't work. And so that's why you'll often find pieces will do like a minimalized version before they can do the fully realized product.
Amazing. And I have to jump on then to your current project. Was this your pinch me moment where you're like, okay, I'm actually doing this?
Absolutely. But it was a couple of pinch me moments have happened throughout it. When I was studying in Glasgow at the Royal Conservatoire, Mamma Mia came to Glasgow at that time and was performing in the King's Theatre. And I actually met up with the assistant musical director at the time and sat in the pit with him, which is where I met Carlton, who's now my boss. That was one of the first times I had sat in a professional touring pit. And then roll on the record about 2.5 years down the line, I get an email from Carlton asking if I'm interested in joining the team at Mamma Mia. And it was starting to feel like a full circle moment. But I think the real full circle moment came when last September, so September 2020, where I'm going to say, yes, we brought the production to Dublin and got to perform in the 3 Arena, which was just like, that was a real pinch me moment. We had sold out the arena for 8 shows that week for 7,000 people every night. And normally the show, when it was conceived, there was a limit put on the capacity that you could have in the audience. I think that limit is 3,000. And the reason that it was actually ABBA who put in that restriction, because they still wanted it to feel somewhat intimate and not become like watered down like a concert and people are viewing from far away. However, a couple of years ago, the tour did an outdoor, it was after COVID, it did a couple of outdoor venues that year. And they had gotten camera crew and screens in to be able to show the show closer up for people who might be farther away in the outdoor venues. So then Nick Grace, who's our producer, he approached ABBA when it came to the Dublin performances, because that was the 20th anniversary of the tour, which opened in Dublin 20 years ago, at that time, 2004. He approached ABBA saying, look, we have these screens and this ability to show the show to audiences who are further back. Can we play to a larger capacity? And initially they had given us permission to do one night for 7,000 people. The rest would be 3,000. Tickets were sold out like that. So eventually we did the whole week for 7,000 people, and I got to conduct 2 shows in front of a full crowd, but a crowd full of friends, family, and it was one of the most nervous feelings I've felt before a show ever.
And like, I was there as your friend. If that hasn't been established yet with the audience, I know Owen very well. And I was nervous for you. Like, because I don't think I took my brain didn't understand. Like, I had seen you in Rebecca. I came to go over to London to see you for that. And then when you were like, I'm going to be in Dublin, you should come stay and see it, I was like, oh yeah, the 3 Arena, it's big. And then I went in and I sat down, and it was just like jam-packed. And I could see you sitting in the way that the 3 Arena was set up. You guys weren't underneath the stage. I could kind of see you fully. And I was like,
right at the front. Yeah.
That must have been scary. Like feeling the whole audience behind you.
It was one of those moments, and like hilariously, like it didn't, like you're saying, it hadn't hit me until that moment that I was walking out, and suddenly you see, it's always nerve-wracking doing a show in front of a home audience anyways. And anyone who I've ever spoken to, no matter what part of the world they're from, whenever they've performed the show to a home audience, always feels it that little bit more here. And I certainly felt that in Dublin. But It was such an incredible, overwhelming experience, but I enjoyed every moment of it. And hilariously, here's just a short little story. As soon as I had gotten the dates through for Dublin, I found out, okay, I'm going to be conducting on the Friday night and the Saturday. I sent all the details around, like I said, to friends and family. I sent it to my mum, and she was probably the first one to buy tickets and ended up getting tickets in the nosebleeds. Was so far away, might as well have been at Dublin Airport for how much she would see of the show. But anyways, hilariously had a friend of hers from her primary school who was sat in maybe the third row right behind me, and during the first act spotted two seats sat like right behind me in the very front row. Texted my mum, said, I'll save those seats for you. No one has come on and gotten them so far. And for the second half, my mum and sister came down. And then, when I took my bow at the end, they were just right there in front of me. And that was really, really magical.
So nice. It's a great story.
It's weird though, right? As in, of all seats in a 7,000 seater arena to be free, the two right behind, front and center, row A, it was incredible. I could not believe it. And yeah, I just felt like, you know what? There's something in the air that's making this work out.
Amazing. And is there a favorite song for you to play every night?
It has to be Does Your Mother Know? Has to be. I think it's just one of those, there are other songs that I love, don't get me wrong. I think Sipping Through My Fingers is one of the most beautifully crafted moments in musical theatre, and certainly in the show. Everyone can relate to it on some level. However, Does Your Mother Know takes the gold medal for me, just because as soon as I turn the page every night and see that it's up next, I just get a bit excited, a bit giddy actually. Everyone sounds fantastic doing it. Or Tanya, the lovely Sarah Earnshaw, is just a powerhouse of a performer, brings the house down every night. And it's just, it is one of those, it's a modern showstopper. That's the best way I can describe it.
I'm just so proud of all the work that you've done throughout the years to get to where you are now. What would you tell young Eoin Corcoran to look forward to if you go back in time?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, because sometimes people say, oh, well, would you tell him just to go straight for music? And I wouldn't, no, because everything that I have done up to this point has been another string to my bow. And I've learned something from every single project, job, interaction that I've done. And yeah, the one thing I would say is just enjoy every interaction with people that you meet along the way, and don't forget them. Some people can think that because I'm now working on a professional commercial musical tour, it's you can forget the people who you've met before, but that's really not the case. And I think you're just going to live an unhappy life if you do.
For sure. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. It's really short because you've got to go back into rehearsals right now.
Yes, absolutely.
I really appreciate you taking the time to join me. Where is Mamma Mia playing, and where can people get tickets for it?
Yes, so right now we are in Newcastle, and after that we're going to Manchester. However, I believe that it is coming back to the island of Ireland next year, and it will be in Belfast sometime in the autumn. So you can get tickets through there.
Thank you so much, Eoin.
Not at all, Richard. Thank you for having me. This has been brilliant.
Chat soon.
Chat later.
You've been listening to Places Please, Richard's Theatre Podcast, hosted by me, Richard Brown. Audio engineering and editing by Connor Gill. Stay tuned for a sneak peek of our next episode.
It's one of my favorite pieces I've ever performed. And that's because half of it is scripted and it's the same every night. And then half of it changes according to choices that are made by 4 audience members who choose to sit on stage. So there's all these experiments going on. So as a performer, that's fun. It's kind of like I've created a game and then I get to play it every time I do it. Because the audience changes each time, that brings a really different energy. Because the audience is choosing certain stories that will and won't be told, we hear stories in different orders, and that really affects the tone of the piece. And in a sense, going through cancer is the awful part. Creating a piece of theater is always a wonderful experience. And I'm really glad that you used the word beautiful, because I do believe that it's a beautiful piece and that it's inspiring and uplifting.